Hello everyone, welcome to MJ Hobby Corner, and this is a brief update. I'm setting up some Deepwars setups, and I usually do this to kind of check out my terrain collection, make sure I have enough terrain, etc. Now this is a pretty big setup. We are playing Deepwars tomorrow, Saturday. I will have a battle report coming up for this game. So I put this table together, and this is a really big table. Normally, we would be playing in a very small table. In fact, the table that we will be using tomorrow is probably half this, right? The setup, or a little bit over half, but certainly not this big. But there's a number of new terrain features here that I just want to point out. Here is the sculpture of a strange mermaid like creature, some kind of goddess or something. That was a sculpture that I made many years ago, and it's broken up and everything, and I decided to use it as terrain. So we have an interesting statue there. We have our reef sharks, jellyfish swarm. And here's something new, a nice big plankton cloud with jellyfish that are floating with it. And there is also a fish feeding on the plankton as well. We have our fish school over here and kind of swimming around. And then my clip-on terrain. And this is what I use to simulate growths of coral and other things coming out of the ruins. So this way I don't specialize my ruins. I can use them in other games. More fish schools. And then we have some kelp beds here. And I have to paint those fish still. Okay, and these are all the new algae beds and stuff. And the giant kelp beds here. Here's another one. Okay, and these are all done with plastic bottles. I cut up the plastic bottles and then twist them with a heat gun. I just hold one end with pliers and then twist the plastic, and then I paint it, and they really do look like kelp. I really love the way they come out. I texture the leaves, the blades of the kelp with hot glue just to give it a little texture. There's some giant clams in there. I'm gonna be painting those a little bit more. Here's another giant clam by this big seaweed bed. Okay, and the fish I think really make the scenario. That's one thing I love about Deepwars, is you can have a lot of sea creatures on your table, and if you have a deep caller, that deep caller can actually manipulate these wild creatures in your favor, and I love that about Deepwars, and I especially love adding the fish because I think it really adds to the table. So I'm going to be making more and more fish schools and plankton beds like that one over there, plankton clouds. All right, I really think it adds a lot to the table. And here's the Gribbly isopod right by the kelp bed. So we'll see how Julie uses those things tomorrow, because she is going to have a deep caller. And here are my depth changers. I'm using plastic cups with like all this texturing, and then we just put a dice to indicate the depth. Same thing with that fish school over there. There is a depth die on there. And we have some sponge, like a sponge forest or something there. Okay, so a lot of stuff going on. Giant hydroids right there. A lot of stuff going on. So now I'm going to set up the table. Julie has already chosen some of the terrain, and I've chosen some of the terrain. And then we're just going to set up the table the way it's going to be tomorrow. I just wanted to show the big setup and a lot of the new terrain. Okay, and there's some model eye views of everything going on. before I pick things up and shorten the board. And there's my mermaid that I converted for Julie. It's painted up. I still have to do some touch-ups, but there is the conversion. And that's going to be one of Julie's mermaids. All right, and here is the smaller setup, and this is what we will be doing for tomorrow, I think. Julie just has to look at it, make sure she likes the terrain placement and all that. But we have our sharks there, our jellyfish swarm, some algae. Julie's mermaid is right here. I got to finish the rest of her warband today. And then we have the big ammonite guy. I still have to paint those fish. And then we have Grumpy Eel. Yeah, Grumpy Eel will be in the board this time. And of course, Grumpy Eel attacks anyone that comes within 6 inches of the wall terrain there. So Grumpy Eel is very grumpy. And 2 of my divers are at a higher depth, closer to the surface, and they're coming down. And then the other 2 divers, there's my sculpture. That's one of the ones I will be using. And there's another diver down there. That's the woman scientist. And they are at depth 0. So they're moving around in the ocean. And I chose almost like a trench type of thing here with these like hills on either side, right? And that's it. A few coral clumps here and there with more fish. There's another fish group. And yeah, so it should be an interesting game tomorrow. Don't miss it. I'm also working on this giant mantis shrimp. This is what we're going to use for a mantis shrimp. And once I finish him, he's going to be somewhere here. So Julie's going to have plenty of wild creatures to charm for her purposes. So we'll see. It's going to be a tough game. And we also have to decide on a scenario, you know, exactly what we're playing. And last but not least, people usually, because I use a very old school method, and I haven't textured this mat. I would like to, so this way you don't have those clear areas there. This is the mat that I use for my underwater scenario. So whenever I do this kind of old school setup for my tables, I use my clips, my alligator clips, and they secure the mat on all 4 sides, all sides, so that everything is nice and secure. It doesn't move. Whatever books and things I have underneath, they sometimes I will hold them down with like masking tape or something, just to make sure that nothing shifts. And these really take very little time to set up, believe it or not, and very little time to break down. So tomorrow will be Deepwars, and you guys will see this board in action as Julie and I battle beneath the Shadow Sea. Thank you very much, guys, and I hope you enjoyed this little video update. This is Terrain Talk, getting ready for Deepwars.